All right, everyone, welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 10 recap. Uh, right now, we're in the midst of a bit of a line app flurry over the trade that occurred tonight between Detling and Gags. I guess I can't be too upset about it or confused about it because technically I think I'm the one that started the craziness by saying that I don't like the trade, which turned into talk about cheating and it's not how it's unfair somehow or it's against the rules, which none of those things are true or even relevant, and talking about old trades and Detling's like, I didn't cheat. It's like, no one's saying you're cheating. It's just, and it turned into all sorts of, I haven't read through, I skimmed through it, I haven't read it all because there's so much of it, of like, I'm sure most of it is not serious, but talking about changing the trade deadline and the rules and the how many transactions and the keepers and all these sorts of things and basically blowing up the league when I don't understand what the craziness is about, because the reason I don't like the trade is because I need Gags as part of my slim road to playoff possibilities. My slim chance of making it to the playoffs, squeaking in, requires help from Gags. Now, I perfectly understand that Gags doesn't give a shit what I want or need, and nor should he. But this week, it would help me out a lot if he could take down Jimmy, and next week, if he could take down Disco. Now, is anything guaranteed, set in stone for these next couple of weeks? Of course not. But the trade that Gags made, while I understand it's for next year, it certainly doesn't, it only diminishes my hopes of him getting a win this week, which would really help me out. Because neither guy that he just traded for helps him at all this week. And he has, let's see, he's still good on his moves, but of course, he has 0 in his fab budget, so not much room there to. And you traded away clear by, I think, far and away this year the best tight end in the league. So that only helps Detling, who I have to play next week. So I'm not mad about the trade. I don't like it because it hurts me. Said, oh, I don't care about next year. I never worry about the keepers as long as I have a chance to make the playoffs this year. That's what I'm worried about and nothing else. The keepers will fall into place once we get to the off season. We can make some trades if you want to, things like that. I'm not worried. I mean, you're free to play your team however, manage your team however you'd like. But as for me, as long as I have a glimmer of hope, excuse me, for making the playoffs, I am going to pursue it as strongly as I can, and it just disappoints me from looking at it about the trade, because from perspective of looking at it at Gags's from looking at the trade from Gags's perspective, everyone is still in playoff contention. I know Detling keeps talking about 7 is the magic number. You always say 7 is the magic number. Most of the time, it is. But this year, looking at the standings right now, maybe it is. I don't know. But as of right now, everyone, I mean, it would depend on the matchups these next couple weeks, how those play out based on the standings and who's playing each other. But right now, everybody has a chance of taking, like I said, the top 4 spots are basically claimed already. Josh, Brian, Justin, and Detling are basically in. I see. So the worst record they could have is 7-6, which is the best record that Jimmy, Disco, and Possum could possibly have, and better than the Isotopes, the Laser Sharks, Gags to Riches, or Mighty Midgets can have. So those 4 spots are almost for sure locked up. But we have literally 8 teams fighting for those last 2 spots. And I understand, as you guys probably know, the trade deadline is coming up. It might be, I want to say it's a week from today, something like that. Usually I usually set it before, like a week before Thanksgiving. So the last couple of weeks. So you got to make some trades now while you still can for things. So I understand it, and I don't really think Gags is giving up on his season, but it's a trade that doesn't give me encouragement in the short term here. And I understand that it's a trade-off. Detling is making his moves to try and win it all this year, and that's fine. Gags looking for a good keeper for next year. He's basically gotten 2 keepers for next year from Detling through trades. So I think he's lined up for Dalvin Cook and Julian Edelman for next year's keepers already. And that's perfectly fine. I'm not complaining about it. I don't like it for my own personal reasons because I see it narrowing my already slim chance to make the playoffs. I need help from everybody else. Everybody else needs help from me. We're all fighting for it. And so basically it's just selfish reasons that I don't like to trade. I don't think it's illegal. I don't have a problem with it being unfair or cheating or collusion or none of these things. Okay? So, anyway, it's purely because I need the help from Gags. And I don't see it. I'm much less confident in his team than I was 2 hours ago. All right, speaking of Gags' team, he's the defending champ, so we always talk about him first. And coming into this week, week 10, we had a chance to have, what was it? 7 teams, all be 4-6. And unfortunately, we only ended up with 3 teams at 4-6 because the Isotopes, the Laser Sharks, and Gags to Riches all went down in defeat. And that meant a win for Bad Luck Bears, and so that they have moved all. New Gods lost, Disco lost, and Possum lost. So, only half the teams, less than half of them, held up their end of the bargain there by losing. So the teams that needed to win didn't do it. But things are, like I said, things are still pretty muddled, and although Gags to Riches and Mighty Midgets are pretty far behind in overall points, so depending on matchups these last couple weeks, they're still technically in it. I think Brian said it before. It's shaping up for 6 and 7 to have a playoff spot this year. So, I mean, the only way it would not happen is if either New Gods, Mad Titans, Disco, or Possum wins out their schedule. So if either any of them lose one game of the next 3, that gives them 7 losses. So it's pretty confident to say that 6 and 7 might be a playoff spot this year. But anyway, so I would have really loved to see the 7, 4, and 6s and see how that played out over the next couple of weeks. But alas, that is not to be. It's just a dream that we leave behind us. As Gags to Riches in the first matchup, he falls to Space Antelope. Final score here, 162.25 to 153.2. This one came down to Monday night. Looks like Detling was behind by about 9 points, and he had the Carolina defense. Fortunately, things worked out pretty well for him, and that, I believe they ended up with 18 points, so they got twice what you needed and got you the win here over Gags. Space Antelope, let's see. Kirk Cousins was your quarterback, just under 59 points. Easily, I think it's safe to say, probably the number one overall player in the league this year. Putting up 58. See, I think I might have talked about this before. He's putting up 58 points. He's had it's funny how consistent his run is. He's had exactly 58. Now, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4 times this year. It's either that or he's somewhere in the 30s. So, you'll definitely, so you don't like those couple weeks where he's getting you in the 30s, but if you're still getting wins, you can't complain too much there. But Kirk Cousins probably, and I'm not looking at the numbers right in front of me, but he's probably the number one quarterback for the whole season here. Been pretty consistent. Said in 10 weeks with like 4 or 5 58-pointers, that's half the time you're going to take that. Space Antelope's wide receivers, T.Y. Hilton, Doug Baldwin, and Jordy Nelson. T.Y., 2 for 20. Doug Baldwin, 5 for 95. And Jordy Nelson, 3 for 20. So 4.5, 14.5, and 5. Your running backs, Latavius Murray and Joe Mixon. Murray looks like 12.5, and Mixon, he got a touchdown there. Looks like he got you just under 10. Your tight end, Safarian Jenkins, let's see, 12.5. Engram, 2 tight ends, a tight end in your flex there. He's been scoring a touchdown pretty much every week, the past few weeks. Let's see. Yeah, the past 4 games, he's scored a touchdown in every single one. He's been right around 17, 18 points every week. So he's definitely worth the trade that you, whatever value you got for him in that trade. With also a trade with Gags for the Edelman there. 15 points this week. Kicker was Forbath. Looks like a 50-yard field goal and a couple PATs. Yahoo says 10. And like I said, Carolina defense, I believe, was 18. And it was just enough to get a win this week. Said Gags Riches, 153, still a pretty good score. It hurts that you started Kobe Fleener with no other options at tight end this week, since Kelsey was on his bye, and now he's no longer on your team. He got you 0 this week. Would have been nice to get maybe a couple points from him. So I don't think you had any other tight ends on your bench. No, and so tight ends have been pretty hard to come by any consistency outside of Travis Kelsey this year. But Gags to Riches, let's see. Quarterback, Drew Brees, in a tough matchup at Buffalo. He only got 33.5 points. It was a running, they won this game. They scored 47 points. And said Drew Brees only had 1 touchdown, and it was a rushing touchdown in a game where the Saints scored 47 points. It was essentially the Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara show in that one. We'll get to those guys a little bit later here. Your receivers, Dez Bryant, Sterling Shepard, and Devontae Adams. Dez, 8 points. Shepard, 11 for 142, so 25 points from him. And Devontae Adams, he had 90 yards and a touchdown. Looks like an even 20 points. Your running backs, Adrian Peterson and Doug Martin. Looks like Peterson lost a fumble, so he only got you 1 point. That hurts. So only 1 point there and a 0 from Fleener. Probably the difference maker in this matchup. Doug Martin, only 5 points from him. You went with Rashard Matthews in your flex. He got you an even 10 points. Zerline, kicker, looks like he made several field goals, a couple PATs. Yahoo says 16, so it's probably a little bit more than that, probably 17 and a half. And then the Patriots defense did pretty good. They got you a long touchdown on the kickoff return. They had a blocked kick. Did pretty good. I think no, they didn't have a safety, did they? I think that was the Seahawks. But they did pretty good. Yahoo says 21. It was probably closer to 30, something like that. I think I said in weeks past that a lot of the times when you add on, either Yahoo is pretty much right on with the scores for the defense, or else you're usually adding 6, 9, 12. It's usually one of those numbers. So usually about 9 is a safe guess. So their defense was probably around 30. Just taking a look back down here at Gags' bench to see if he had used anyone besides Rashard Matthews in the flex that might have helped him get a win here. But no. Really the 10 points for Matthews, you only had, basically you would have gotten the same score from Taylor Gabriel or Cooper Kupp. So really not much you could have done here in this matchup. You started your best lineup, but unfortunately, Adrian Peterson and Coby Fleener let you down this week with only basically 1 point combined between the two of them. So with that victory, Space Antelope gets his 7th win. He's 7-3. He is in 4th place, while Gags to Riches is on the other end of the spectrum. He is 3-7, and he is in 11th place. All right, going right down the line here. Skeletor Isotopes versus number 1 Shawshank Athletics. And the Shawshank Athletics scoring only the fourth 200-point, 2-hondo score of the year. 2 of them have been against the Isotopes. 2 of the 4. Just had to add that in there. But Shawshank goes over 200 this week and defeats the Isotopes 205.4 to 134.35. Let's see, for Shawshank, Tom Brady, 50 points from him. His receivers, Kelvin Benjamin, DeAndre Hopkins, and Robert Woods. Kelvin Benjamin playing with his new team, Buffalo. After sitting out the first week, didn't do too much here. Just over 7. DeAndre Hopkins, even with the loss of Deshaun Watson, looks like he's going to still be a target hog there in Houston. And especially if they're going to get behind by huge margins like it looks like they've been the past couple of weeks since Watson went down. They lost here by, 33-7. So they lost by 26 points. He had 7 catches, over 100 yards, just over 18 points from him. But then the most difficult thing was the most difficult pill to swallow for the Isotopes here was Robert Woods going for 43 points, counting the long touchdown bonus here. He had a 94-yard touchdown. He was over 170 receiving yards. Had 2 touchdowns on 8 catches. So like I said, 43 points from him. Your running backs, so that's 93 points just from Robert Woods and Tom Brady. 93 points. And then DeMarco Murray scores 3 touchdowns. He only had 40 rushing yards, but he scored 3 times. So that's 22 points there. So almost enough to almost enough to take down the Isotopes just between Tom Brady, Robert Woods, and DeMarco Murray. What I said, 93 and 22 would be about 115-ish. Yeah, that was almost enough to do it. And if that wasn't enough, you had Matt Breida as your other running back. He had 50 yards and a touchdown. Austin Hooper, why not have him score a touchdown too? And he did. He got you 17 points. Thompson in the flex could have been a lot worse here. Or better for you, worse for me. Only 9.5 points there. Kicker was Lambo from Jacksonville. And Jacksonville should have lost this game. But somehow they were winning. I think they were winning 17-14 with a minute to go. but that new guy from the Chargers who scored 2 receiving touchdowns, I think he actually fumbled the ball away in the last minute of the game and gave Jacksonville a chance to tie it with a field goal. I think actually Lambeau had like -1 up to that point because he missed a PAT. And then he kicked a field goal to tie the game, and he kicked a field goal to win the game, which got you about 6 points. And of course, you also had the Jacksonville defense, and they went from losing the game and only giving I guess the score from the Chargers didn't change, but would have liked to see that game at least go the other way, or at least end with a -3 for Jacksonville there for your defense. But it is all for naught because it doesn't matter. There's really absolutely nothing that the Isotopes could have done with their lineup to get a win this week when you score 200, when you go over 200. That's the only really. I guess it's kind of a relief for me this week because this was the week that I had circled for most of the year because I knew that I was going to have a couple of my best players out this week. That's the whole reason I trade. That's really the only reason why I traded Alshon Jeffrey, is because I knew that week 10 I needed to put a good lineup out there to try and beat Josh and probably get a win this week. I was tinkering with trying to maybe trade for a different quarterback. I was thinking about trading Carr for somebody. Thought about picking up a couple different quarterbacks. Decided to roll the dice on Osweiler. Thought maybe he would do a little bit better. Even though this game was a blowout, I don't really know how he managed to do so poorly. Only 30 points there. But even if I had picked up Case Keenum or CJ Beathard from the 49ers, which is the guy that I was thinking about all week long, that I should pick him up and play him instead of Osweiler, it really doesn't matter. It ends up not mattering at all because nothing I could have done would have gotten me a win this week. So you beat me by 70 points. So even if I had gotten maybe 20 more points from my quarterback, that wouldn't matter. I went with the Bears defense, thinking they would do, coming off a bye. They were at home. They've been playing pretty well. Thought they would do better, but they ended up losing to the Packers. So of course, I actually would have been better off playing the Falcons defense against the Cowboys this week. I think way better off because one guy had, I think, six or 7 sacks all by himself in that game. But like I said, no matter what I would have done, I would not have won. So I said real quick, Isotopes. Lineup this week was Osweiler, 30 points. Marvin Jones, after being crazy the last couple of weeks, they only threw the ball to against Cleveland, and they scored 38 points. And they only threw the ball to Marvin Jones twice. He had 1 catch for 20 yards. After he's been red hot the past couple of weeks, scoring 21, 18, and 29. Said gotta play him. He's so hot right now. That sounded strange, but he's been on fire, let's say. But, so disappointing performance for Marvin Jones. Larry Fitzgerald, he was at 21.5. Stephon Diggs, 17.5. Running backs, Aaron Jones and Tevin Coleman. Of course, Aaron Jones sprained his knee early on in that game after getting 12 rushing yards, so only 1 point from him. Tevin Coleman definitely benefited from Devontae Freeman going out with another concussion. Not sure if I'm pretty sure he's actually not going to. They already have ruled him out for this week, so be interesting to see what happens there. They might take on the side of precaution there in terms of Freeman. We'll see how that affects the Bad Luck Bears, because I'm pretty sure his running back core is pretty slim outside of Coleman and Fournette there. So Jones got hurt, but Coleman, he ended up with 80 yards and a touchdown. Gronkowski, 11.5. Gurley in the flex, 19.5. Kicker was Prater. Looks like he had a 40-yard field goal and 5 PATs. so about 10 points there. And again, Chicago defense, I think Yahoo is actually correct. They only got 6 points. So enough for Shawshank, the Kubicek killer, the Twerk Kubicek, whatever you want to call him. He defeats the Isotopes this week, moves to 9-1, setting up pretty good for him. He's in first place. The Isotopes are 3-7. They are in 9th place. So I think we mentioned this before. Shawshank Athletics at 9-1. As far as I can tell, the best record that we've ever had has been 11-2. So you definitely have a chance to break that record. But I said, winning 3 games in a row in this league, I think you probably won more than that, having only one loss this year. But putting together any sort of significant win streak in this league is always pretty difficult. Next up, we had the Mighty Midgets versus trying to salvage his season versus New Gods Mad Titans, looking to get the upset here, and he ends up doing it thanks to huge games from Cam Newton and Devin Funchess on Monday night. I think Mighty Midgets was down by about what was the score there? He was down about 56 or so. He had 98 points. GB's to 154. So, yeah, about 56, 57 points he needed combined from Newton and Funchess. And Cam Newton pretty much covered that all by himself there. For Mighty Midgets, said Newton, 59.5. Funchess, 26.5. His other receivers, Robbie Anderson, who has been on a touchdown roll here also these past few weeks, 18.5 points from him, and Brandon Cooks, 13.5. Running backs, Abdullah, 50 yards and a touchdown. Derrick Henry, 50 yards, no touchdown. So, 11.5 and 5, basically. Tight end, Kyle Rudolph, as always, 8.5 points from him. That's pretty much where he's at pretty much every single week, unless he manages to score a touchdown, which has only been 3 times this year. And then Alvin Kamara, speaking of being on fire this year for the past few weeks, he goes over 27 points, over 100 yards rushing, a touchdown, 5 catches. He has had his past 3 weeks, the past 2 weeks he's been at 31 and 27. But the weeks before that, he's been 16, 15, 11, and 25, and 13. So he's been over 11 pretty much every single week, except the first 2 weeks when things were said he was still new to the team. They still had Adrian Peterson. Things were kind of muddled up there with that. But now it's basically, said this past week was basically the Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram show, as I believe Ingram had 3 touchdowns and Kamara had 1 there. So it said 27.5 points. Kicker was Bryant from Atlanta. He had a couple field goals, a couple PATs, including a 50-yarder. So he was over 10. And then Buffalo defense got crushed by the New Orleans Saints there. So you said you had a couple, you needed Kamara against your defense there, but he did pretty well. Buffalo's, Yahoo says 3. I believe that was correct, or else maybe it was 6, something in the single digits there. Not very good, but enough thanks to Cam and Funchess. Said Funchess had 2 of Cam's 4 touchdown passes, and it was enough to get past New Gods Mad Titans, who went with Marcus Mariota because Wentz was on bye. 44.5 points from him. Your wide receivers, Ginn, Sanders, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Ginn only 1.5. Sanders just under 20. And Smith-Schuster just over 20. Running backs, C.J. Anderson and Melvin Gordon. Looks like Anderson 5.5 and Gordon just under 3. Witten at tight end, just under 13. Le'Veon Bell in the flex, a little bit over 16. Boswell, your kicker, looks like 2 field goals, and he missed a PAT, so a little over 5. And then Green Bay defense beat Chicago. Yahoo says 14. I think it was somewhere in the 20s. It was a pretty excuse me. It was definitely a lot higher than 14. I think it may have been 21, 22, something like that. Maybe in the mid-20s, somewhere in the mid-20s, I think. But anyway, it was not enough as Mighty Midgets gets the win this week. He knocks New Gods Mad Titans back to 4-6, but they are still currently in a playoff spot in 6th place, while the Mighty Midgets are 3-7, tied with a couple of other people, but he is, in terms of points, he is at the bottom of the barrel. He is in 12th place. Next, we had Bad Luck Bears going against frickin' Laser Sharks. Friggin', not frickin'. And the Bad Luck Bears get some good luck this week, getting the win 169.85 to 138.5. For Bad Luck Bears, Jared Goff, thanks to that long touchdown, he was actually a little bit over 60 points. Your receivers, Julio, Golden Tate, and Mohamed Sanu, depending pretty heavily on those Atlanta Falcons. So he also has, of course, Devontae Freeman, who went out with the injury. Said Julio, 11.5, Sanu, 6, and then Golden Tate was better than those two combined. He actually went for 21.5. Freeman went out early in that game. He only got you 3 yards, so 0.3. And looks like Fournette only got you about 3.5. Then Jimmy Graham, 2 touchdowns on 6 catches, but unfortunately they were only 27 yards there. But you'll definitely take the touchdowns. In the flex, you had Deshaun Jackson, a little bit over 14 from him. Let's see. Kicker was Nugent from Dallas. Looks like he made a PAT and missed a field goal, so he actually got you 0. And Seattle defense did pretty good against Arizona. I think they were the ones who got the safety. Yahoo says 19. I think it was actually about 32, 33, somewhere. They did pretty well in terms of yardage given up and stuff like that. So it was enough to get past friggin' Laser Sharks, who went with Prescott again at quarterback, only 35 points from him. Your wide receivers, I think you had Mike Evans out on suspension. You had all your Eagles were off on their byes. So you played Tyler Lockett, Marquise Lee, and Willie Snead. Quite an interesting receiver combo there. Lockett, only 2.5. Snead, 0. And Marquise Lee salvaging something out of that with 19.5 points from him. Running backs, Orleans Darkwa and TJ Yeldon. Yikes. Darkwa, 70 and a 2-point conversion. So not a bad score there, 9 points. And TJ Yeldon, only 1 point there. Julius Thomas at tight end. Yikes. But he did manage to get you a short touchdown. He had 2 catches for 8, but one of them, fortunately for you, was a touchdown. And then again, the Ingram Show, 3 touchdowns, over 130 rushing yards, just over 34 points. Kicker from Tennessee, Suckup, looks like he had a little over 6. And also your only defense again, Tennessee Titans. They had a couple turnovers, looks like 1 sack. They won the game. Gave up a decent amount of yardage though. Yahoo says 13. It was probably about 21 or so, if I remember correctly. But not enough. Said about a 30-point difference here. Bye week blues definitely hurt. Friggin' Laser Sharks here, as you would have liked to have Mike Evans. Said that was just a suspension, but Zach Ertz been one of the better tight ends this year too. Probably right up there with Kelsey in terms of production this year. And said no Aguilar, who you like to start. And I know you like your Eagles, but I don't know if you start Wendell Smallwood or Isaiah Crowell in that spot there. But anyway, not enough, as Laser Sharks, they fall to 3-7, but not bad. They're in 10th place, while definitely could be worse. But bad luck Bears, you are now even at 5-5 in 5th place. So fives all around there for you. Next matchup, we had FC Bahorik versus Disco. And FC Bahorik narrowly takes this one down. Final score 150.05. Is that correct? Yeah. To 143.85. This one also came down to Monday night, as each one of you had a wide receiver, Samuel versus Jarvis Landry. Actually, Jarvis Landry ended up scoring 6 more points than Samuel, but the difference, let's see, FC Bahorik had about a 12-point mark. They had about a 12-point cushion here going into Monday night, so you needed a little bit more from Jarvis Landry and a little bit less from Samuel, even though Samuel tried to help you out there by getting injured in the middle of the game, and he's now done for the year, I believe. But that last-minute touchdown for Jarvis Landry was not enough to cover your deficit there, as FC gets the win. Quarterback Matt Ryan, right where he usually is, 38 points. AJ Green, he actually had 25.5 points because he had a long touchdown. Said Samuel, 9.5 before checking out. And same thing with Keenan Allen, about 9.5. Looks like he actually had some rushing stats there, so it was probably actually, for Keenan Allen, it was actually 8.8, I see. Then your running backs, you got lucky here a little bit, started Dion. This might actually, 7-point margin of victory. This might have been the difference maker in this matchup, as you started Dion Lewis. Probably not very often you've done that this year, but he ran a kickoff back for a touchdown, which is 9 points for you because it was a 100-yard touchdown. And he also actually ended up with a rushing touchdown in there. He had 50 yards and another rushing touchdown. So that so 2 touchdowns for Dion Lewis. One of the few weeks that you actually use him, so getting lucky there. The other running back was Rawls. He only got 27 yards. Only 2 for your tight end, Cameron Brate. Bilal Powell in the flex. He got you 2.5 points. There was a ridiculous amount of money, fab money spent on Jets running backs leading up to week 10 here. About probably 150, maybe close to $200 in fab money spent on Jets running backs. So very interesting. But Bilal Powell is, I will hate him forever, and he will never be on a team of mine ever. And Justin, you know you can probably relate to how I feel now by actually having him on your team there and doing Bilal Powell doing typical Bilal Powell things. 2.5 points. Then your kicker was Hauschka from Buffalo. Looks like a field goal and 1 PAT. And then the Rams defense, they did pretty good against the Deshaun Watson-less Houston Texans there. Yahoo says 21. I think it was actually closer to 35 to 40. They did pretty well in terms of yardage. I think the rushing yards were real low. First downs were low too. I think they had 4 turnovers. Only 7 points given up. Pretty good there. It was just enough to get past Disco this week, who had Matthew Stafford go for 40, Michael Thomas 20.5, Jarvis Landry said 15.2. A valiant effort on his part to try and get it squeak out a win for you this week. You had to go with Martavis Bryant and your other wide receiver, as you had a couple guys on bye this week. He actually did okay. 8.5 points from him, which is a pretty high total, I think, based on his production throughout at least the last few weeks there. He had 1 week where he scored a touchdown. He had 18 points. But I see this week was basically equaling his second. If you take out that 1 week where he scored 18, this was pretty much his highest, matching his highest scoring week of the year. So you kind of lucked out there with some production from him. Your running backs, Carlos Hyde and Marlon Mack. Hyde actually just under 100 yards rushing. Only 98. You would have liked to get those 2 more and get that 3-point bonus. Maybe we change the outcome here. So also Marlon Mack, under 10 yards from him, only 7. So you got less than a point from him. And you had to start O.J. Howard in your tight end. And he actually got 0. So you just missed that 100-yard bonus. You got less than 1 from Marlon Mack. And you got 0 from O.J. Howard. Not sure what other tight end you have. You have Njoku from the from the Cleveland Browns. You also have Martellus Bennett and C.J. Fedorowicz. I'm not sure if you had Fedorowicz before or not, but looks like the best play would have been actually Martellus Bennett, who I don't know why you would start him because he was just picked up, and he's got to be playing with some sort of injury. Not sure if it's, I want to say it's some kind of rotator cuff injury, but I'm not, like I said, he thought he was opting for surgery there after leaving the Packers or whatever. That kind of situation is kind of messy there. But looks like Bennett got 6.8. So if you had started Martellus Bennett, you would have won this matchup by about half a point, maybe less than half. But again, you can't predict, said O.J. Howard getting 0, and it would have been nuts, I think, to start Martellus Bennett. Because said his first week back with the Patriots, and knowing he's got some sort of injury, and said Fedorowicz, he only got 3, Njoku only got 1.5. None of those guys would have helped you out, and said starting Bennett would have probably wasn't even on the radar here for you, knowing what his injury problems are. But anyway, said Hyde, Mack, and O.J. Howard. Said before about Dion Lewis maybe was the difference maker here. That was on the FC Bohoric side, but here for Disco, said you just missed that 100-yard bonus. Marlon Mack and O.J. Howard combining for 0.7. So that really hurts. James White in the flex scored a touchdown, got you 10.5. Kicker Gostowski, 9 points, probably a little bit more than that. And then Steelers defense did pretty good again. Yahoo says 12. I want to say, actually, what was it? I think you said on the lineup, I think I noticed this, that both teams actually got 15 more points for their defenses than what Yahoo says. So they kind of balanced, although those extra points kind of balanced each other out there. So that would have meant the Rams had 36 and the Steelers defense had 27. So pretty good defensive scores there. But like I said, the differences were Dion Lewis getting that that kick return touchdown, and a couple guys getting real low scores there for Disco here. As for FC Bohoric, he gets win number 7. He is in 3rd place at 7-3, while Disco, you drop to 4-6, although you're still in decent position here at 7th place. And then finally, the last matchup was Hillbillies on PCP versus Possum Magic. I think this one was never really close at all, as Hillbillies on PCP, he had a guy going on Monday night, but it didn't really matter because he was already up by 33 points over Possum Magic, who was already finished. Final score here, 164.8 to 111.2. So for Hillbillies, he went with Roethlisberger, 38.5. Receivers, Demaryius Thomas, Antonio Brown, and Adam Thielen. Demaryius Thomas, 15.5. Antonio Brown, only 7.5 there. And Thielen, actually 33.5 points from him. He has been probably one of the sneaky good picks of the whole draft this year, especially in terms of wide receivers. When he does good, he does really good. His game log looks like he has a couple of games where he's been around 20 or over 20. or else he's usually in he's looking at his game log, so he's usually in the about 10-point area. But he's had, for the most part, it's either in about 10 points or he's getting you about 20, 25 points. So he had his best game of the year this week with 33.5, though. Let's see. Running backs, LaShawn McCoy and Jordan Howard. McCoy, 5 points. Basically, both of these guys, 5 points. 5.5 from Howard. Doyle at tight end, only 3 points. McCaffrey in the flex, an even 20. Kicker was Lutz from New Orleans. A couple field goals, 5 PATs. Looks like about 12.5 points from him. And Detroit defense, it looks like they scored a touchdown, had 4 sacks, just a couple turnovers there. Yahoo says 19. I think it was closer to 30, something like that. But it was enough to get past Possum Magic, who got, let's see, he said 40. His quarterback, Russell Wilson, 43 and 43.8. And then I'm seeing a lot of single-digit scores here, the rest of his lineup, which is never good. Always a bad sign there. Your receivers, Curse, Sammy Watkins, and Corey Davis. Curse, let's see, 7.5. Watkins managed to get a touchdown, getting him 12. And Davis, let's see, he lost a fumble, 6.8 from him. Running backs, Lamar Miller and Alfred Morris. Said no Zeke for a while, looks like. Said you're going to have to scramble here, Possum, to maybe try and make a playoff run here. Said Miller, looks like he got 6. And Alfred Morris got you a little bit over 5. Tight end, Hunter Henry, only 1 for 7. In the flex was Jerick McKinnon, only 6.5 points. Kicker is Gold from San Francisco. Actually, San Francisco got their first win, did pretty good this week. It looks like he only had 1 field goal but 4 PATs. So he was around 9 points. And then your defense, they did win the game, but they gave up a ton of yards and a ton of points. Looks like they had one turnover and 1 sack, but they won. Yahoo says 4, but it was probably closer to 10 or so. I said all those single-digit scores, not going to be enough. So Adam Thielen pretty much outscoring, let's see, Thielen's 33.5 basically covered Curse, Watkins, Davis, Lamar Miller, and Alfred Morris. Pretty much covering 5 guys all by himself there. So not enough for Possum this week. He drops to 4-6. Still in decent shape, though, with the standings the way they are. You're in 8th place, and Hillbillies on PCP move all the way up to 8-2, and they are in 2nd place. All right, those are all the matchups for this week. I think if there's anything else we didn't cover. The knockout pool came down to Detling, Brian, and Jay, and the team eliminated this week by only 2 points. 2.5 points was Detling, which means the knockout pool is getting chopped because nobody has any balls. No one wants to just take it for themselves. They just want some guaranteed money. So they'll be splitting $30 each, Brian and Jay, which is, of course, Jay has yet to pay his league dues. So technically, he can just pay $15 and pretend like he never, pretend like the chopping the knockout pool basically never happened. And for Brian, we can get him his money. So we still need Tree Slice's money from Jimmy. It must be a Huber thing here. So we're still waiting on that. Should be able to give Brian his half of the money. Probably here it'll be in for Thanksgiving usually. Said for Turkey Bowl and our Thanksgiving podcast. So that's pretty much it for this week. Taking a quick look at the week ahead. Everybody still has a playoff chance. Although some of you guys have really low points totals, which always hurts when it gets down to the last week or two there. and a lot of the records are the same. So this week, let's see. All the teams that are fighting for the playoff spot are the Bears, the Titans, Disco, Possum, Isotopes, Laser Sharks, Gags to Riches, and Mighty Midgets. So let's see who has a chance to drop and who has a chance to rise this week. Isotopes versus Laser Sharks there. Both teams 3-7. Whoever loses this matchup will probably be gone. I think we can safely say if you get to 8 losses this year, you are most definitely going to be eliminated. So the winner of that one will stay alive. The loser, probably done for the year, so that's an important matchup. We have New Gods versus Gags to Riches, as I mentioned before. Said Kevin, he needs me to lose this week. And basically, Kevin needs me to lose and him to win the rest of his schedule. And he also needs Kevin, you also need Gags to knock down New Gods Mad Titans this week, which Yahoo is projecting New Gods to win by about 30. So that's not looking good for us. I'm just describing it from my perspective, but of course, if you're Kevin Bean and friggin' Laser Sharks, you're looking at it as, well, I need to beat the Isotopes this week, and I need Gags to defeat New Gods Mad Titans, which is not looking too good right now. Then we have Bad Luck Bears versus Space Antelope. We need Bad Luck Bears to lose this one, and Detling to win. The projection is about 18 points in favor of 16 points for Space Antelope here, so we'll see. That should be a good matchup either way. Said Kevin and I are both rooting for ourselves, and we're rooting for Gags and Detling here. Next matchup, FC Bahorik versus Hillbillies on PCP. That'll be a good matchup no matter what happens, but both of them really are basically set for playoffs. Doesn't matter too much what happens. Overall, for them, I'm sure Brian wants to get a win and keep pace with Josh. Justin would like to move up and maybe catch, at least moving us, have a chance for a bye week here. So that matchup, while it's not important to the overall scheme of things, it's important to those guys and should be a pretty good one. And then we have Mighty Midgets going up against Disco. Let's see. So again, those guys who were down at the bottom here, Midgets, he needs to get a win, but we also kind of want Midgets to get a win this week and knock Disco back a little bit. That should be pretty. The projections are pretty low. I think Mighty Midgets said he has his Panthers out on bye this week, Cam and Funchess, so we'll see what he can do there, filling in for them. And finally, we have Shawshank versus Possum. Said we're rooting for Shawshank here to knock Possum down one more peg. Hopefully, said 3-7 teams, me, Kevin, Gags, and Jim. We all are looking for we all want those 4 and 6 guys to lose, and we want ourselves to win to muddle things up a little bit more. So we'll see what happens. Basically, all these matchups leave it open to happening. Said, unfortunately, that matchup between me and Kevin is probably going to eliminate one of us and keep the other one alive. And Gags to Riches, if he loses, that probably knocks him out for the year. Said, I think 3-8, we can safely say that you're not going to make it. So, but we're rooting for you, Gags. I'm rooting for me and you and Detling and Jim and Josh. And I'll root for Justin on this. So I'm rooting for and Kevin, he's rooting for himself. He's rooting for Gags. He's rooting for Detling. He's rooting for Jim, and he's rooting for Josh. And he can decide between Justin and Brian, whichever one he wants to win that matchup there. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be tough. Could go a whole bunch of different ways here coming into the last few weeks of the season. So, like I said, we have 8 teams all fighting for 2 spots. So it's going to be winner take all. Hopefully everyone's So most everyone is through their bye weeks except for the Mighty Midgets there. I'm not sure if there's probably, it can't just be one team on bye. I think the Jets are on bye this week too. That actually hurts Mighty Midgets, I think, because he's been having Robbie Anderson doing pretty well. Let's take a quick look at Mighty Midgets. His lineup this week. He's got Anderson, Funchess, and Newton all on bye. And Ty Montgomery's hurt. I think he got his ribs hurt again, so who knows what's going to happen there. So it looks like he's starting Crowder and Jaron Brown, I think, from the Cardinals. So he's going to be in a tough spot to try and get a win there. Let's see, because Disco is going to have most of his main pieces good to go. So we'll see what happens. So we're rooting for you, though, Jim. So going to be interesting to see. Rooting for myself, obviously, to keep those playoff hopes alive. And it's going to be another good week. So hoping for the best, but the optimism is getting slimmer and slimmer as each week goes by here. So we'll see what happens. Should be a good week. Hopefully no big injuries, and everyone has a pretty competitive performance this week. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here again next week as we wrap up Week 11. Already almost through the season. Almost time for Turkey Bowl. Again, the trade deadline coming up real soon. Let me take a quick look and see if I can just tell you what it is right away. Let's see. Usually Yahoo will have it here as like a notification to you, but I don't see it there. So let's take a quick look so I can give you a definite. It is November 18, which is today is the Tuesday the 14th. So you actually only have a couple more days to make trades. So Wednesday is the 15th. So you got till basically Saturday, probably midnight on Saturday night to finish your trades there. So I'm not sure if it actually ends. I don't know if you have through the 18th or until the 18th. I would just assume that it's until the 18th. So you probably have through the 17th, which is very soon. So should be interesting if anybody's going to make some more trades there. That's why I don't really think that the trade deadline needs to go back any earlier. Hardly anyone ever really said that's a good thing about the league, because no one ever really throws in the towel and just quits, even if except maybe for Jimmy the one year when he was busy planning a wedding, whatever a lousy excuse that was. But no one ever really throws in the towel. They fight all the way down to the very last game and stay competitive, give everybody a good fight, which is that's the way it should be. Like it shouldn't matter if you're 1-10. You should put your best lineup out there every week. And even if you're I don't care if you're 1-10 playing against a team that's 10-1, you should play to win every single week and put out the best team that you can. And don't roll over and let those teams who are in the playoffs you're getting teams. You might have teams who are fighting for a playoff spot, and like I said before earlier in the kind of the trade discussion, there is that other people are kind of needing you to possibly take down people who are still fighting late in the season for a playoff spot. Might need you to take down a couple people in the course of the final stretch of the season there to help them out. And if they kind of see you giving up on your team and maybe making some moves to diminish at least in appearance, diminish your team for that season, and give maybe other teams that are also fighting for a playoff spot, maybe give, not saying guaranteeing them a win, but maybe giving them a little bit of an easier chance at getting a win. that's always going to be frustrating to those teams who are also fighting for a playoff spot and are maybe playing a better team that they have a chance of beating, but it's definitely not as easy as playing a team who has kind of traded away some of their better players and are starting lesser players than they should be. But to each their own. In managing your teams, I don't really have a problem with it. And I see I've gone over an hour here just now. So, all right, everyone. I already said this, but thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here again next week. All right, good luck to everyone, but especially to me. Thanks, guys.